Thank you very much, Guy. Finally, before we take a little break, we're going to explore the world of Opal Louis Nations. Opal is a writer, editor, publisher, and a blues gospel musicologist. He lives in Berkeley, California. We published 2 of his books this year, his fabulous short surreal novel, Mr. Body, and the new collection, A Cornucopia, which has got all sorts of neat stuff. It's got it's got a lexicon in it, and you can meet Eleanor Papertoe, and it's just terrific. And to have a reading from this book, I would like to introduce to you one of Canada's foremost treasures as writer and publisher, Mr. Stuart Ross.
Thanks a lot, Richard, and thanks, Bev, as well. I think what Bev had been doing for so many years with Mercury Press and Richard had been doing in the world of music, and the 2 of them to come together with this press doing such adventurous, exploratory, wild things is a great thing for all of us who want to read adventurous Canadian writing. And it's a real honor also for me to read from the works of Opal Louis Nations. Opal also, by the way, was a doo-wop singer. He was the leader of Martin Hum and the Hummingbirds in the early 1960s. And if you look at his website, you can hear some of those incredible tracks. I met Opal in about 1979 or 1980. I reviewed one of his books. I can't even remember what it was. I've got about 60 of his books now. I reviewed it in the York University newspaper, and his wife happened to go to York, which I didn't know. And so she saw it and told him, and he phoned me up. And I went over, and it was a really, really magical night. It was the beginning of a great period of hero worship that continues till now. One of the great small press gods, and is a fantastic writer. Opal was the editor of Strange Feces Press, and published a lot of great books. In fact, published a book by Ron Padgett, and perhaps one by thinking J.G. Ballard, Mimeo, but it might not have been J.G. Ballard, another science fiction writer of that era, perhaps. He also did Strange Feces magazine, the very last issue of which was called Endangered Feces. And I'm just going to read a bit of poetry and a bit of prose from this really marvelous book. And I'd also really encourage you to look at Mr. Body. Actually, when I visited Opal in Oakland in 1982, and he put me in this bedroom. This shelves, just binders and binders and binders of his manuscripts, mostly unpublished. And one of them was this manuscript, Mr. Body. And I always wanted to see it in print, so I'm so grateful that Bev and Richard have done that. I thought an appropriate place to start reading would be with a poem in here called If a Hurricane. Listen for further warnings and advice on battery radio if a hurricane. If you see a hurricane coming, move into a sturdy basement if a hurricane. If you see a hurricane arriving, board up windows and brace doors with good lumber if a hurricane. If you see a hurricane moving. Check easy to prepare emergency food if a hurricane. If you hear a hurricane approaching. Set about emergency drinking water if a hurricane. If you feel a hurricane advancing. Have flashlights and emergency lights ready if a hurricane is attacking. Secure all that may be blown around or torn loose if a hurricane is passing through. Open window or door on lee of house if a hurricane is due. Be sure you have gas in your car if a hurricane is assaulting. Stay in a safe place if a hurricane looks offensive. Make emergency repairs if a hurricane is shifting. Keep calm, then you will better cope if a hurricane is blowing your way. I'm going to read just the beginning of a story here. I'm going to read excerpts from a couple of the pieces here because I think it's such a wonderful thing to explore the stories yourself. But this is it's a brief story. I could read the whole thing, but I won't. It's called The Restaurant. Eating out was a rare and much remembered occasion. Although Roger enjoyed his wife's homely fare, Melinda was always on the lookout for ways of preparing their favorite dishes. She enjoyed eating out, as this was a sure way of picking up a few culinary hints. The El Tamarar's interior had a mock Eastern flavor, a few potted palms, and even a stuffed camel laden with coat hooks. The furniture was rattan, and the pastel friezes of desert landscapes on the walls gave one the impression that Michelangelo must have had a cousin living somewhere in Gaza. The head waiter bowed, proffered a buttered smile, and led the couple to a quiet corner. Once seated and accustomed to the cloak of darkness lit only from the center by a slow-burning candle, they were offered wine lists and ordered a bottle. "I brought you here tonight, darling, because I have a confession to make to you," said Roger in a serious, confidential tone. "Oh, Roger, must you always be so dramatic?" said Melinda, gazing into the glare of the candle flame, a little annoyed. "It's been going on for weeks," he said under his breath. The wine was brought, tasted, and poured into the glasses. "It's not another woman, is it, Roger?" Melinda said, taking a sip of the wine, all the time trying to remain calm. "Not exactly. It's a maggot." So, you can read the rest of that yourself. Okay. Gets pretty offensive later on. Here's a story I'll read in full. It's less than a page long. It's called Aunt Eddie. One spring, when Aunt Eddie was quite old, she suddenly announced that she had never heard a hummingbird sing and must do so at once. But as the nightingale's turn did not come on till quite late, she would get ready for bed first. So at 10:30, Margaret pushed her in her bath chair up to the little wood at the end of the garden. She was in a special bird-listening costume of red dressing gown, several shawls, scarves, and rugs, a hot water bottle and rubber boots. Her hair was in a wispy pigtail, and she was without her teeth. At the moment of eye contact, the nightingale, who had been singing madly up till then, naturally went mute, and with all a prima donna's proper feelings, entirely refused to sing any more. So Aunt Ettie, her nostrils twitching, caught hold of her hot water bottle, and with all her strength, threw it across the garden, where it landed in the cesspool, never from that moment on to see the light of day. I actually eventually published a couple of chapbooks by Opal through my Proper Tales Press imprint, and the titles of them probably give you a little more idea of him. The first one was called The Hats and Stockings of Great Heroes Who Sang for 6 Months. And the other one was actually a reproduction of an older book, a mimeograph book that he'd done in the late 60s, or early 70s perhaps, called Meet Me Under the Elm Tree at 8 o'clock, Tell Tom and Mary to Come Too. He's got another book called The Tragic Hug of a Small French Wrestler. And that has a really amazing story in which there's this incredible contest in which these large men they drink an awful lot and don't go to the washroom. So they drink tons and tons of liquid. And then they, with all the strength and tension they have, try to slow down the revolution of the earth. So you can look for that. And another book of his is Sitting on the Lawn with a Lady Twice My Size. It's published by Intermedia in Montreal. Anyway, it's an incredible world, the world of Opal Nations. I'm just going to read 2 more short pieces from him. One is a poem called Receipts for Certain Luxuries. And I'm very fond of this because when I stayed with him, he was amazed that I went to the market and bought fresh peas and sat there eating peas out of the pod. He found this astonishing, and he began calling me Pods and Podsy. I get all these letters addressed to Podsy Rozovsky. Anyway, and this poem has the word pod in the first line, so I'm thinking maybe I was in his mind when he wrote it. Receipts for certain luxuries. I was born in a pod. I was born and was shod. I was born in a suit. I have skin made from jute. I have 2 disquisitions, I have 3 predilections, I have 4 blood conditions and 5 more transitions. I will clap till I'm clean, I will sprout till I'm green, I will dance till I'm round, I will swim over ground, I will sing till I fly and will dream when I cry, I will kiss till it scalds, I will love you with colds, I will plow you a heart, I will steam you apart, I will snore when I stroll, I will make you a soul, I can drum with my rib, I can write like a squid, I can melt like a tear, I can eat my own ear, I can eat with my ear. I can wake like a dawn, I can take any form, I can snow like the slum, I can swell when I run, I can shrink as I drown, I can vanish when brown, I can open like a play, I can multiply all day, I can laugh like a stone and smoke with a comb, I can sneeze like a cloud, I can lean like a crowd, I can heal every death, I can steal your own breath, I can reverse the unreal, I can sew with an eel. I can sandwich the sea and set corpses free. I can make saw blades of stars. I can put storms in jars. I can bolt down your shadow and put teeth in pianos. I can button the sky and roll film in one eye. I can squat like a room and soon when nature retires like a perfectly elegant creature, we will have left only the memory of our own old wives' tales. And I'll finish off reading a couple of sections from a longer piece in here that I think is so brilliant. Notes from the journals of Johnny Topaiga. I don't know about Kierkegaard. I have nothing against him, you understand, but sometimes I want to kill myself. That is when I am ashamed and afraid, when my whole life seems to be a mere small voice inside some wireless radio. But I find strength in something. My signed photograph of Dolores Del Rio, how stunning she looked in a still from Bird of Paradise, and other things like bacillus and trees. And then I want to go on, but keep my eyes tightly shut. I know that I'll never pluck all the despair from my heart, but always I look for those things that can save me. When I was 11, my father committed me to my own moral decisions. It was Martha, really. She kept a piece of finely preserved cabbage in her ear. How strange she was, and how she liked to talk about Botticelli. Yes, it was cabbage and Botticelli that helped me graduate from unconscious despair. I mean from that stage of seeking and wishing for something that I was not. At 15, I had a traumatic experience. Martha's little green leaf had moldered away. It had left an infection. She could no longer hear me speak to her about Botticelli's Venus, the wonders of the lobed scallop, the sheer buoyancy of things. This upheaval was of conflict between popularity and standard. I had entered a stage of self-shame, a time when I thought the streets littered with painful, invisible pins. This was short-lived, however, as I made a very sincere commitment. I would let the soft hair on my legs gently caress the smoothness of my youthful cheeks. This actually involved a mystical confrontation. I cannot clarify this very easily. About this time, when alone and thinking one night, I figured that about a quarter of my life had passed. I was mildly terrified. My clothes began to look older on me. They seemed to age before I had time to realize that my physical aging, had done this thing. I have been taught about the immortal so, how strongly I felt about making it big and strong by placing myself before the mirror, smiling, always smiling. Your being will remain forever young if you look kindly upon yourself, someone told me. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Stuart. So that's what that email meant. I got an email from Opal, said, make sure Stuart eats lots of peas before he reads. We'll take a 5 to 10 minute break and we'll be back with the second set. Thank you.